Hey y'all, we are talking today, I am reteaching today over solving absolute value inequalities. Part of the reason that we are reteaching is because some people are super duper confused and Miss Marty made a grave error during 6th period. And the only reason I caught it is because the woman who is your sub today knows math, and she was at the back of the classroom and she made a mistake. She made a face when I made the mistake. Oopsies. So we're going to not only fix that mistake, but we are going to clarify some stuff today. So first and foremost, when you have an absolute value inequality, the stuff in the absolute value is either 12 units from zero, at least 12 units from zero, which is the case right here, or it's no more than 12 units from zero. And that's when you would use the less than symbol. So no more than means that it's less than or equal to, and if it's at least 12 units from 0 means it would be greater than or equal to 0 or 12 or whatever. I'm sorry. I'm really tired. It's 4 o'clock. It's Monday. I actually slept this weekend, but I am exhausted. So I'm going to pause there and work through some stuff and write down some words and come back. Okay, so if this stuff is either greater than or equal to 12 or less than negative 12, then that means that 3x plus 6 is less than or equal to negative 12. So more than 12 to the left, or more than 12 to the right. And you must divide it up into those two different pieces with the word or. I accidentally talked about or and correctly. Incorrect. Oh my gosh, y'all. I'm so tired. I accidentally talked about or and incorrectly in 6th period yesterday. Not yesterday, Friday. No, Thursday. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. So we go ahead and solve for x on one side. And if you watch, when I get to the other side, the answer on one side is going to have almost nothing to do with the answer on the other. And it's 425. So we come over here. And we get x greater than or equal to 2. Well, those two numbers don't look anything alike, and that is a normal answer for these. You really have to be careful and think carefully about that very first step. Once you have that very first step down, it becomes a pretty straightforward algebra problem. I'm now going to move on to the next slide. I'm going to write out the work, and I'm going to write notes next to the work so that you can see it. But I'm not going to go quite as slowly in the next couple because I know you can push pause. So here you can see that the absolute value is not isolated. It is always important to isolate the absolute value first. So I'm going to write about that. When I'm done, I'm going to talk about that. So this right here is an extremely important step. You have now isolated the absolute value. Once you have done that, then you start thinking about what does that absolute value need to be between? Or where is that absolute value? Well, it's less than or equal to 35 units away from 0. So the stuff in the absolute value is between negative 35 and 35. And again, I want to re-emphasize that the first thing we did was isolate the absolute value. That is really critical. Okay. I'm trying not to take up too much of your time with my chitter chatter. So what does all of this mean? This means that 5x plus 6 has to be greater than or equal to negative 35 because it's close to 0, and 5x plus 6 is less than or equal to 35 because again it's close to 0. Notice again how I split it up into two different pieces. I remembered that the stuff in the absolute value is no more than 35 units from 0. I got two very different answers here. And we know that it's greater than or equal to negative 41 over 5. And I used the wrong word there. See how easy that is? It has to be somewhere between negative 41 over 5 and 29 over 5. And we have closed dots. And you have to make sure you color loudly enough. I don't think that's really the right word. For me to be able to see it. I'm going to do one more example, and hopefully that will help too. By the time we got to this one, in most of my classes, people had forgotten some basics. One of the basics is that you need to get the absolute value all by itself, or, as we said earlier, isolate the absolute value. So we do that first. And when you are doing that, you need to remember that this over here, when you have a number squished up against something, that is a multiplication problem, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So when we get to this point, we need to divide both sides by negative 2. And we get the absolute value of x plus 1, and then we divide it by a negative. And a lot of people forgot what that does. When you divide by, or multiply by a negative in an inequality, you flip the symbol. So all of that was actually algebra review. Now we're down to the absolute value piece, which people are struggling with. This is where you need to remember your number line, and you might need to draw it. This expression right here means that your stuff in the absolute value has to be farther away from 0 than 4. So it's either greater than 4 or less than negative 4, because it's got to be more than 4 away. That is not my answer. I'm going to show you my answer now. But this is the piece that people are getting tripped up on. So we solve here like we would almost any ordinary Algebra 1 problem, and we go to our number line, and x has to be less than or equal to negative 5. And it also has to be greater than or equal to 3. And the 3 is included, so you fill in the circle. Okay. I feel like that's all I have time for on notes. Please feel free to come in for tutoring. Sign up for a fit session. If you sign up for a fit session, please remember my fits are crowded. If you really want help, come in to school after school on Tuesday. I will be here today after school, before school on Wednesday, or before or after school on Thursday. It is important that you get this down because this is the majority of what this next test will be over.